Thanks for tuning in to the Mission Matters podcast, where we feature successful, mission-driven leaders committed to creating a positive change in the world. Our mission with this channel is to inspire other leaders by providing industry insights, new ideas, and inspiring stories from the pros.
Well, hello, I'm Paul Feith, host of this show where I talk with leaders heading up mission-focused organizations, leading from the heart, inspiring others, and making a difference in our communities. This episode is sponsored by Paul Gregory Media, or affectionately known as PGM, who's also a certified B Corporation. To learn more about what a B Corporation is or what Paul Gregory Media does, visit paulgregorymedia.com. Very excited to have Jennifer Kopach. Jennifer, do you prefer Jenny or Jennifer?
Definitely go by Jenny.
Jenny, okay.
It's like the sign.
Team Jenny. Oh, we'll go with the whole team thing in a minute. So you're the CEO and Senior VP Marketing Communications for Science Olympiad, the nation's largest K-12 team STEM competition. Can't wait to dive into that. I hear you're in your 41st year, and you're across now 50 state chapters and 57 alumni chapters across the U.S. Is that correct?
Yeah, even more, actually. Now we're up to 60. So.
Oh, my. Okay. That's awesome. And you're also, if that weren't enough and you weren't busy enough, you're also the president and CEO of the Science Olympiad USA Foundation, which is the nonprofit arm dedicated to carrying out, I'm going to read what I have here on LinkedIn, carrying out charitable, educational, and scientific purposes of Science Olympiad. So I'd like to get into exactly what the foundation is. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here. I know I've known you for a couple of years now, and I have a sense of what Science Olympiad is, and I'd like to dive into that for our listeners. But before Science Olympiad, what was Jenny doing? What led you there?
What was Jenny doing? So I like to tell this story, and I still actually have this piece of paper that in 8th grade, you know, when you have those career surveys and they print out, like, based on your answers, this is what you should be. So my 8th grade on the, that green and white, computer paper from the printer, it actually said that Jenny should be a businesswoman in the sciences. And I thought, that's great news. So I didn't really think about the sciences very much, but I definitely thought the businesswoman part sounded cool. So I went to Michigan for communications and economics, and that was what my degree was in, and went into PR and marketing in Chicago. So, of course, most people who live in Michigan and go to the University of Michigan, they want to move to Chicago because that's where all the cool people are. So, went right to Chicago, got into the PR world, worked at a couple of small firms, and then started, a family. So during the time we were having our family, I did a lot of freelance and did a lot of writing and helped my brother stand up his own design firm and marketing firm, and always stayed very close to the PR and marketing world. And at the same time, my parents, out of their basement, decided to start a nonprofit organization called Science Olympiad. So that was something that was started when I was still in high school, and I was on one of the very first teams. So as my dad took his background in the Army and also his background in science education administration, he pulled all those things together to start this nonprofit. So it's always been part of our family. I call Science Olympiad the original STEM startup. So being part of its founding, going around to workshops with my parents when I was, little, and then in high school, even in college, the whole family sort of pulled together and always helped with design, with writing. Since I was at a PR firm, I used to write the Science Olympiad press releases and help with their media outreach. And I did as much as I could up until the point where Science Olympiad started getting really big about 20 years in. And it sort of maxed out the capacity of my parents' basement and their ability to run it as sort of a small grassroots mom and pop shop. So we moved the entire Science Olympiad organization to Chicago. And that's when things sort of really took off, from being an organization that was hovering around about 5,000 teams that we were serving across the country, and maybe about 40 states, which was still huge, to something that grew into what I like to say now, 41 years in, is a well-functioning nonprofit that has all the pieces and parts of all the big guys. We play in the same space in Chicago as many of the other largest nonprofits, and we function with boards, supporting foundation, and a whole suite of services and tools that make us feel really good about our ability to perform program service, but also make sure that we're able to stick around by being fiscally responsible enough to run like a business. So my background, I think, in sort of PR, marketing, and economics, it all came together, and now I am a lady in business and science.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, something about having a brick and mortar building. I think having a 501c3, answering to a board,
Mm-hmm.
and having that governance legitimizes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, they had a working board. I mean, they were founder based and had a working board. And these are people that I've known my entire life. I mean, my parents' co-founder, Jack Cairns, was a fellow educator. He was the head of science for all of Delaware. So I grew up knowing the head of science for Nebraska and the head of science for Pennsylvania, and all these folks that were in our lives that were almost like family, really, because we spent so much time with them. They were the board. So they were running the organizations, doing their jobs and doing this on the side. But over time, the capacity of folks who are running Science Olympiad sort of maxed out. And you realize you needed to get into the territory of adding corporate board members, people from the media, people from different levels of government, different partners. And as that grew, as we all know, running a nonprofit, the governance part takes just as much time sometimes as the program service. And I really liked the organizational challenge of working with lawyers here in Chicago, working with the Kellogg Nonprofit Business Institute, which was really helpful to me, learning more about best practices with bylaws and adding board members and then doing board service. Those things actually helped us attract more partners and sponsors as well because they knew we were functioning. And then what we really had to do was we had to have staff. So we never had a staff. We had just my mom as one employee with a working board of the same people that founded it, turning that ship around and having actual W-2 employees, having a benefits program, all the things that normal nonprofits would think, of course we have these things. We didn't have them. So we had to add all those things, and that's where I came in. So formal office, staff, formal accounting, all the bells and whistles that go with running a small office and a small business. That's where I came in and grew from a role doing PR and marketing and sponsorships to, over the 10 years that I was here to start with, I think the board saw, oh, she has the capacity to be the executive director because I was working with so many government partners and sponsors and working so well with our state and national volunteers that it was clear that it was a good fit for me because I knew Science Olympiad down to my bones and in my DNA. But I also had the PR and marketing skills to do things like start a website and write a brochure and all the things that you need for external comms. I could do those in-house, which was very much a cost savings issue. So so executive director, I became that in 2016 and had that role until my dad actually passed away in 2019, right before COVID. And then I took on the CEO role and then navigated with my team, of course, through COVID. And I think that leadership test was really my baptism into the next phase of Science Olympiad, which is where we are now, which is having a foundation and then doing some really exciting work that I think is going to take us into the next 10 and 20 years.
Sure. And just backing up a little bit, I mean, obviously you brought a lot of value to the organization just with your PR and marketing background. I mean, those services are so much needed in a growing organization just to build that awareness. So I think you added quite a bit of value. But even before that, you'll be surprised at how many nonprofits start out as an all-volunteer organization.
Mm-hmm.
They really, and now you're at that point. Well, even in 2016, you were at a point where it sounds like you were just a fully functioning business with just a tax designation, a different tax exempt.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, obviously, nonprofits rise and fall on their ability to do program service. But I think a lot of people start out with a nonprofit idea and they want to do something really good. But the back end of what it takes to run a nonprofit is the same that it takes to run any business. So truly, everyone who has that passion for some kind of service, some sort of a need that we see in society, those folks are entrepreneurs. I mean, when you start a foundation or a nonprofit, you're an entrepreneur. you need to have all those skills. You need to be able to fundraise, and you need to be a salesperson. You need to be able to talk about your mission, and you need to have the practical skills of accounting and dealing with numbers and making sure that the lights are on and paying bills. And I'm the IT department too. I handle all the computers and the printers and the network. And so, I mean, I know how to do all that as well, just because that was kind of how I was raised in an area where let's start a business in our house. Okay. So I grew up with a business in my house. And I think that like roll up your sleeves attitude is so prevalent in nonprofits that is why we can persist and succeed over time, because we are willing to do all the work and do anything. And that's, to me, honestly, what I see when I meet someone. And quite often it's a very apparent skill in a Science Olympiad person, that their ability to work, just to be a worker. I recognize a fellow worker when I see one. And I think that actually, that to me is like such an important and maybe undervalued skill. We look at a lot of resume things, but I think when you get right down to it, the heart and soul of a nonprofit person is the work, the ability to do the work and just try anything and do anything.
Yeah, that roll up your sleeves mentality and be in the thick of it, as opposed to more of an advisory role or.
Right.
And you can sniff that out.
I mean, I do feel like I can see a fellow worker when I meet one.
Yeah. So I could sit here and talk about governance and operations and business all day, but it's time to talk about what Science Olympiad is. What is the service and programs it provides?
Oh, Science Olympiad. I mean, it's so many things. I mean, at the base and most obvious level, Science Olympiad is a big competition. So we actually, we have a game that we play. We run tournaments. So I always say that, Science Olympiad, what we do at the national office is we write the rules of the game, we provide the feel for the game and the referees of the game. So Science Olympiad functions just like a sport at a school. We do have a set of rules that we release every fall. And then as a teacher in your school, you want to be a coach for the team, and then you assemble student teams, and then they practice all throughout the year, working towards a goal of scaling up through a series of competitions, which are practice and then competitive qualifying tournaments at the regional and state and national level. So there's always a prize, for each moment of advancement along the academic year. And it's very exciting to sort of pull that thread throughout the entire academic year. It's not just a one-off. There's several layers of competition and lots of opportunities along the way, which is my favorite thing about Science Olympiad, is that it provides students with choice. So Science Olympiad is not robotics or chemistry or engineering or math. It is everything. So we're the biggest cross-disciplinary science competition, and it allows people who have a biology and engineering and computer science need or desire to actually follow pathways and topics that they're the most interested in. It's also the biggest team competition. So we have 15 kids who are actually on the varsity team that go into battle and play on the day. Those 15 students have to work together to complete 23 challenges. And they always say it's an accident that there's 23 events in Science Olympiad, but there's a Division B for middle school and a Division C for high school. There's 23 events in each. I'm like, come on, DNA played something to do, played into this for sure. So you have to work as a team. You have to develop real world skills of collaboration and problem solving. You have to learn how to fail, which is one of the best skills you could ever take with you to college and beyond. And the teachers love it too, because what they're doing is they're taking their love of science curriculum and they're actually taking it beyond the school day and working with students who have sort of raised their hand and said yes to science. The kids that want to do more, the kids that want to apply the skills that they've learned in the classroom to real world challenges. And so Science Olympiad gives you the ability to take tests, to be in the lab, to build things and test them on site, and then to actually follow maybe a path of going deep into a topic that you really are interested in, like disease detectives is one of our events. We developed it with the Centers for Disease Control. And students take a test and they apply their knowledge of pandemics and outbreaks by doing statistical analysis and answering questions. But what happens is these students often go into careers in epidemiology and public health, and often will want to work at like the NIH or the CDC. So we see this career pathway continuum, which I don't necessarily think the people who started Science Olympiad thought Science Olympiad would wind up being one of the biggest workforce development drivers in the country, sort of unintentionally. 41 years in, that's something that I get to see now. As someone who actually competed in 1985, I would be one of the oldest alums in the country. And it's amazing to see at this point in time how many of our alums are in amazing careers doing the most incredible things. They're CEOs and founders and astronauts, just solving the big problems of today and in positions of great influence and power now. So I love to see that. It gives me such joy to watch like the entire national like alumni group of Science Olympiad come together and do, incredible things. So that's the Science Olympiad part of the competition. There's a social emotional side to Science Olympiad that is, to me, really right even level with the academic side, which is the fact that during COVID, people told us this over and over, that Science Olympiad saved them. Science Olympiad was their safety net, their social safety net. Science Olympiad, it's your people. So whether you're a state director or you're an event supervisor for an event that you love and you're dragging, big bags of balsa wood and testing tables around with buckets of sand so you can help kids figure out if their tower is actually going to hold some weight. These people come together at Science Olympiad tournaments, at state events, to coach, to be on a team. They come together because it's like-minded people who are like really excited about science. And it's created this massive family, this massive community. And the community starts with the person you're working on the team with, and then your entire team, and then your entire school club, and then the people you compete against when you go to tournaments, and the people you travel with, and then your community that embraces you, and then the National Science Olympiad community. And then out of that was born something that I love. So out of the kids who were doing Science Olympiad in middle school and high school, they graduated, went to college and said, we don't want to stop. We want to keep the Science Olympiad train going. And they organically, without us telling them to do it, they started Science Olympiad alumni chapters at colleges like Cornell and Caltech were two of our first. And it was just a grouping of students that wanted to give back. And they thought, can we host a tournament for the kids that are local? Could we start doing that ourselves? Would you let us, Science Olympiad? Would you let us run a tournament? We said, sure. So they started running tournaments, but in doing so, they also built a college community. So colleges began seeing that if they had Science Olympiad chapters on colleges, it would allow those students to group together, to stay connected to science, to keep them in their science majors, but then allow them to do community work. So they're doing outreach, like going into elementary schools here in Chicago, doing science on the South Side, where groups of University of Chicago students who are alums go and work in the elementary schools and help them. And then they wind up raising money, getting grants, and then hosting these tournaments, which become these incredible like travel opportunities for students. So they call them the T30s, all the top 30 colleges to get into, all the Ivies, all the Big Ten, ACC schools, all those schools have a Science Olympiad alumni chapter, and all of them host an invitational practice or regional tournament, which gives students a trip. It's a campus visit trip that Science Olympiad provides. And this is all done just out of love of the game, which to me just says everything about the power of that Science Olympiad community, which is why I think it's just as important as the academics. We're providing this incredible training experience for people that want to follow careers in science, but also this incredible social fabric where these are the people that are going to be in your wedding. These are the people that you have Christmas dinner with. These are the people that you go on trips with. And these are the people you'll spend your Saturday with, in a gym watching airplanes fly in circles to make sure that, they have the highest time aloft. It's like a lifestyle, and I love it.
It's got to be so rewarding to see, especially if this is something that these students are doing on their own.
They are.
And you have, I think in the beginning, we talked about over 60 now.
Yeah, we have 60. Yeah. So I have a list. We actually organized it by college conference because I'm like, on college game day, we could probably have a college game day, and have as many Science Olympiad kids show up as they do for sports practically.
Yeah.
Okay, exaggerating there. But all the places they go are places we have a Science Olympiad tournament. So it's a really cool thing. And I know that administrators at colleges and department chairs have started to notice, like, oh my gosh, these are the best of the best kids because they're following the pathway, which it's hard to stick on a college STEM pathway. It's one of the most often dropped off of college pathways. A lot of people will bottom out in their freshman or sophomore year following different STEM majors. This keeps them together because it provides this like enormous give back. And they always say when you go to like a college, like a meet and greet for your freshmen, they say, just have your person find one thing. Just find one thing besides going to college that keeps them in college. And this is that one thing for so many. And then it provides this great beacon for students who are in high school. This is where I want to go. So now we hear from so many kids saying, I am doing all of my college planning and visits based on where there's a Science Olympiad chapter.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's becoming a major factor. Okay.
Huge. I mean, it's common, like it's commonly cited. And so now what we've seen, again, without asking, is we see colleges putting Science Olympiad on there. This is what we want to see in you. So if you look at several of the top college websites about if you would like to get in, these are the kinds of things we look for because no one wants someone who has touched on like a million things and I'm really scattered and I'm trying everything because I'm trying to build my resume. People want to see depth. They want to see like what you're really interested in because then it's real. Because if it's self-directed, then that self-directed motivation is going to take you through all the hard times in college and your career, and you can't fake that. So they see when someone goes deep into Science Olympiad, maybe it's protein modeling, maybe it's one of our structures events, maybe it's microbe mission. If that's your thing and you go deep on that on your own, that is a signal and a flag for people to understand you are going to succeed in our college and we want you. So it's a huge predictor and driver of success. And I feel just so proud.
Yeah, I'm starting to get that sense of the two-pronged approach where it's not only from the actual mechanics, the game itself and keeping the unit together, but also that social aspect where now it's a part of their lives. They're doing something on their own on the college campus. And then, like you said, these people go on to be CEOs and executive directors and other things. Those are the people that end up sponsoring future programs or being a part of it in some way or fashion. So what a testament to a nonprofit that is making a difference in the world, but also it's got that stickiness to it that really affects a person's life deeply.
100%. And we are here now recognizing the impact of the people that have done this, for us. So that's why we started the Science Olympiad Foundation, precisely in order to give back to the alums who are at college, to students who want to follow STEM pathways, to the teachers who are thinking about becoming science teachers because we really need to help with recruitment, but also our state chapters who are running these tournaments, who are doing this incredible work, quite often partnered with a university STEM outreach department. That's actually the majority of our state directors now have that role to actually increase recruitment and increase STEM majors. So that's a perfect fit for Science Olympiad, but our foundation is now doing something that I wish my dad was here to see because he would be so thrilled. We're actually incentivizing STEM research by giving Science Olympiad alumni research. So it's SOAR, SOAR. So that's my favorite thing. We're giving these SOAR grants to allow students to pursue research when they're in what they call the valley of death. So it's a research valley of death between when you're an undergrad and then when you get more established as like maybe an assistant professor, you don't have the ability to access research dollars yet. So in that valley of death comes Science Olympiad, and we're giving $25,000 research grants to early career, graduate, undergraduate, and postdoc students even people who are doing like assistant professorships who need just a little something to get them started on their research pathway. So for the first 2 years, we gave $25,000 grants to someone in medical and energy research. And these are students at our college chapters who are Science Olympiad alums who are doing amazing things. And so I like to say we're attaching a rocket to not only their research, but also their career, because by giving you this notice and giving you this award, it also allows you to get noticed by your college, which is really important. Sure. Because what they're doing, I mean, we have 20-year-olds doing targeted immunotherapy for head and neck cancer here in Northwestern. I mean, this is an incredible person who they say, you know, is someday maybe going to like win a Nobel Prize. And we were just a little tiny part of their success. If I can do that more, especially when people are more reticent to give grants these days and people are tighter with their pocketbooks, Science Olympiad saved from day one. We put money aside because that's just our nature. And then we invested early. So we do have money to give. And we want to show our community the deepest and most, sincere gratitude for being volunteers, for sticking with us, for being part of our community by giving back. So we give $50,000 in college scholarships for seniors. We give $50,000 to $70,000 in research grants to emerging researchers. And this year we're doing it in medical and also quantum AI and cybersecurity research. So we'll be reaching electrical engineering and computer science departments, which is really cool. Obviously, everything AI and quantum is in the news right now. Yep. So we want to show people that that's what we're investing in. And then, of course, our teachers and state directors who are doing the work, they're actually running Science Olympiad and providing this platform on which people can choose to perform what they love best about science. So we are going to, my goal is to continue to grow the Science Olympiad Foundation so that we can give even more back and we can cause people to be able to follow the pathways that they have started in Science Olympiad.
Wow, that's amazing. It's really full circle too. And you're right. The universities kind of take notice when a student receives a grant like that. And it's not insignificant. It's a pretty sizable grant. So
every single person we've given a grant to has been highlighted on their college's website. And that's not, and there's a lot of students that would like to get noticed. There's a lot of students who are doing amazing work. And so, I mean, again, you kind of go back to that PR and marketing side. I mean, we are a social media world. We do need to get noticed. And if there's a way to help shout from a rooftop instead of like hiding it quietly in the corner, I'm going to be able to do that for you. And that's what Science Olympiad can do with all the different ways that we talk about the Science Olympiad work. We also want to talk about you and your achievements. And you said something that is actually so great. You said the people in Science Olympiad now are in positions to actually help you and maybe make grants and be partners. And I mean, in the next month, I will be announcing exactly that. So someone who did Science Olympiad, whose kids were on Science Olympiad, they were a coach, they are CEOs of a huge company, and they're going to be announcing a humongous partnership with us. So it's incredible to have people in sort of like my generation and age group be able to be in positions of power now where they can green light deals that actually are going to actually make an impact. So that's very exciting because they're like, no sales needed. I've already done it. I already know. I am the proof. I am the person sitting in the chair. I am the CEO. I am the founder. I do know Science Olympiad works because I did it. And so we don't even have to like convince anyone. I always say that too. If you have to convince someone to love your program and love what you're doing, you've already lost. So yeah, love me from the start and work with me, and then you'll be able to support me. Otherwise, it's never going to work.
Exactly. Well, Jenny, you don't get to where you are without hitting a few bumps in the road and challenges. And I know this is being recorded in early 2005, so there's been some major bumps of late. What kind of challenges do you see for yourself that may also impact other nonprofits? And I know we talked about this earlier, so I'm really teeing this up for you. Mm-hmm. And how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, I mean, 2025. I mean, you took us 20 years back with your 2005 there, but I mean, it's 2025. Oh, yeah. 2025. I mean, that's what's happening with our minds these days. We don't even know what year it is. but it's 2025 has started off, a very bumpy path, I think, for the nonprofit community. And that's what's actually concerning me quite a bit for my nonprofit brothers and sisters, people who are also sitting in the CEO chair, dealing with budgets and boards and their entire staff. I mean, we're responsible for people's health care. We're responsible for people's paychecks and their ability to pay their mortgage. So we're thinking about our staff, but we're also thinking about our ability to do program service. And with all the uncertainty around different administrative and political changes, we as nonprofit leaders are having to navigate things that we've really never had to navigate before. We sometimes are allowed to walk between the raindrops of political upheaval and change, but this time it's hitting us right in the face. And I think we need to be ready for how changes in government and state funding actually affect our ability to do program service. And I've said this amongst many of my nonprofit friends who are out there on the front lines fighting, that we are, due to external forces, facing a nonprofit recession that's independent of what happens with the regular economy. Because when people are shook and chilled by events happening politically, it causes them to tighten their belts and their own wallets. So they are less generous and less giving. Maybe you'll appeal to people who are independent givers, who can personally give. But when you're talking about people in corporations, especially all the uncertainty around diversity and inclusion, which nonprofits quite often are asked to carry the entire banner for, that is why many people exist in a space, because they want to help, they want to give, and they often want to give and help people who need help. And so it feels great to have a nonprofit that's service-based. I mean, program service is in our charter. We want to serve, we want to help. So especially for people in the nonprofit space right now, and I would include myself, obviously, even though we are not a social service type nonprofit, we're all in the service of helping people. We all have a mission and a goal to make something better. So we should all care about everything that everyone's doing. We should care about people who are trying to end hunger, people who are trying to make sure people have a place to sleep, access to medicine, and scientific competitions. I mean, on the list of like life's have-tos, a scientific competition might not be seen as a have-to, but we are developing the scientists who are going to solve the problems of hunger and poverty and where to sleep and how to live and clean air and clean water and all the things that we need as humans. So we are part of the equation in terms of like nonprofits are good for humanity. So when you mess with nonprofits, you mess with all of us. And so it does affect our ability to function. And I've already heard people who are not going to make budget this year, and nonprofits are year to year. Not many people have an endowment, and 92% of nonprofits, their budget's less than $1 million. So if you have any staff at all, and you have anywhere to sit, and you have any utilities and anything that you give out, you are just living on a razor's edge budget. So only 8% of all nonprofits in the country have a budget over $1 million. So in terms of like any wiggle room, any cushion, any savings, I mean, people hear that we have an endowment and investments, and they're like, what are you talking about? I don't even have 3 months of cash set aside. So this environment of 2025 and the chilling effect of, I think perhaps an edge and a trend towards greed and meanness has actually affected all nonprofits and will continue to. So I will be on the front lines, with my brothers and sisters in nonprofits. I will be fighting and standing up for our ability and right to serve people. And I'll continue to do what I can to make sure that we keep our mission close to our hearts, and we keep doing this great work so that we can hold our heads high and say that we tried.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a big roadblock. And I'm glad there's people like you on the front lines. I mean, obviously self-survival, but it's also nonprofits have to kind of band together and stick together on this as well. to get some clarity around all of this.
Right. I think if people think you're in it alone, you're not. I mean, we are a community. Nonprofit leaders are part of a big community, and I think that we're so in our own heads with our program service and like what we do and keeping the lights on and making sure everybody is, paid and has benefits and the kids or whoever's, on the receiving end of your program, that they're doing it and everything's going to be okay and you're making sure everything's going to be okay. But in the back of your head, you're watching the news just like everyone else, and you know that sometimes it's not going to be okay, and not every nonprofit is going to make it through this year. There will be people that close their doors, and we know that for sure. So that means closing doors of one of the most significant parts of the economy and a huge part of our workforce. And so there'll be lots of our people who will lose their jobs in the nonprofit sector. And that means that kids won't have, places to play and things to do, and adults won't have food and necessities.
Right. This is not a business closing. This is beneficiaries losing service.
Yeah, and it's really important to recognize our place in the economy, the nonprofit world, as a driver of business and a driver of tax-paying employees should be paid attention to and listened to. So I think we have a really strong community and we have a really strong voice. And I love the people that are exercising their voice right now. I think that's what will take us over this hump.
Well, and with your marketing background and PR background, you'll be sure to make sure that you have a very loud voice in that chorus, I'm sure.
I am not shy, and I am not going to be quiet. So,
yeah. I am thrilled that Science Olympiad is doing so well. I would almost say you are obviously the right person for this position, but I think better than that, I would say that you seem very comfortable and happy in this position, and maybe it's just the right position for you at this time. And I think that's evident.
I mean, I definitely feel called to serve. This was not the path that I ever thought I would follow, especially I was trying to set Science Olympiad up for succession planning before my dad passed away. We had revamped our bylaws, and we'd set up an organizational hierarchy where new people could come in and run this organization and bring that blend of science and enthusiasm and teaching and business skill to the role. And right at that moment, he passed away somewhat suddenly. So we were not ready yet. And since I was executive director, I stepped into the role. And it was what the organization needed at that moment, because his loss was so shocking and so sad for our entire national community. So I think that by having the founder's daughter step into that leadership role, it gave people a sense of comfort and a sense that someone would carry that like corporate culture forward, and the deep love of Science Olympiad would never go away. So I knew that after he passed, I was a vessel of hope for a lot of people to keep the train on the tracks, and also keep that like beacon that people could look to in terms of like Science Olympiad will always be there. I think that that's the role that I knew people saw me in, and I was happy to do it because of the respect that I have for the community that was built, because these are many people who are like family to me, and also our family to me. I mean, my mother was the co-founder, and in the space of, losing my dad and going through the grief of that, and also during COVID, and then losing my brother, we had a lot of family upheaval. And again, I was able to, to manage things because I had this incredible, I think, like training, which was my entire life of watching and listening and being around people who showed me that like you can combine service and business and love and family, and you can be the same person at work that you are at home. And I just knew that this role was something that I had to fulfill. And so in leading through COVID as well, where we were an in-person, on-campus, student-based competition that you can't you can't do that if everything's closed. So our volunteers built us an online playing space. In the space of no more than a couple of months did we stand up an entire digital environment for Science Olympiad, which allowed everybody to stay together and keep playing. So even though we lost a lot of our members and people ran in the other direction from being together, we kept Science Olympiad together. And I think seeing the community's reaction to that, as well as the loss of my dad, it inspired me to do even more. So that's when I founded the foundation in his honor, decided to really put a stake in the ground on making sure we give back. And then I'm really firm on our corporate culture and what it takes to have the honor of being part of our family. I take it very seriously. So I have a very high bar for people who exemplify having the right Science Olympiad spirit, which means loving the organization just as much as you love anything else. And so I think I saw that in my family. I was raised to be very cause oriented, and yes, this space I think was sort of made for me, and I was made for the moment. But what's also really exciting is to see who else is made for this moment and who else has the right stuff to help lead us into the next phase of what Science Olympiad will be in the next 5 and 10 years. So being able to be a talent scout and see who's out there to work with us and to partner with us to help us grow, that is, I think, the gained wisdom of being in this seat for so long, is that you really know who's going to make it and really who isn't.
Yeah. And we were talking before that I think, you have the ability to look for people, take this organization forward that are really willing to roll up their sleeves and become part of the work that the organization's doing, not just an advisory level or supervisory.
Yes. And I think that it's like, to me, it's a great honor to work here and to be in this role. I mean, people look to you every day. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of people playing the game and thousands of volunteers and so many people that Science Olympiad look to so fondly. And to know that started, in my parents' basement, that without mom and dad taking that leap in 1984 and founding this and going out and scraping for money and having my mom be the only employee and just all the crazy things like answering the phone Science Olympiad because they were too cheap to get a second line. I had to literally answer the phone when my boyfriend called Science Olympiad. I mean, wow. That's pretty cool when you're 16 years old. So I mean, I've seen how important it is to blend those two things. And while it can be hard and it's a great responsibility, it's also just an incredible honor. So I think that obviously comes through.
And you want that to be an honor for anybody else that works there.
Yes. And that is, I mean, I would say that's a litmus test. And I would say that's something it's very apparent in people. You can tell when they are living it and when they feel it, and they have the emotional intelligence to be able to understand that. I mean, Science Olympiad is an academic competition. We work with some of the most brilliant people all across the country in government and corporations. People are very intelligent, but can you work with others? Do you have emotional intelligence? Are you intuitive? Are you sensitive? I prefer that style of leadership. And to be in a nonprofit, at any nonprofit, you have to have that ability to suppress your own ego and be very collaborative, and also just be wrong. Just be wrong all the time. And it's okay. So if you check your ego at the door and you're committed to the program service first, you're going to do very well. And Science Olympiad is particularly attuned to people who have that. And I love being able to elevate them and give them spots on the board and be able to include them in, doing work with our students. And also, the best of all, being able to hire incredible people, which is what we have here. I mean, the team we have at Science Olympiad at the national office is just world class. And they have world class hearts as well.
Awesome. Well put. Jenny, it has been a pleasure getting to know a little bit more about you and the good work that Science Olympiad is doing. Did not know about the social aspect of this. And benefits of that, and building these characters and building these teams and having them go off and do their own alumni chapters in the school. That's really encouraging to hear. And then off to do some amazing work as our next generation's scientists and figure outers, if you will.
Problem solvers is what I say. They're problem solvers.
Yes.
The original goal was to create scientifically literate people. People who understand science and people who can solve problems. That's what we need today.
Well, there you go. So thank you for being a guest on the show. I really appreciate it. And any parting thoughts for our guests there?
Oh, parting thoughts. I mean, earlier we talked about, some like words of wisdom or words to live by. And I mean, it's right over my shoulder. So it's not Jenny. It's get shit done. So that is my absolute motto. And I think it's a great way to live. So Team GSD forever.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being on the show. Till next time, everyone.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for listening to the Mission Matters podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.